We welcome back to the show, speaking of being a part of the show, from Americans for Prosperity, Tori Venable joins us in studio to talk about the legislative session that is soon to be over. I'm very excited. I'm always excited when the ne'er-do-wells in the General Assembly get on home and leave us alone for another calendar year. Hello, Tori. How are you?
Hello, Matt. And I don't think you could possibly be more excited than I am.
I bet. How long do you, I mean, you're down there all the time, aren't you?
That's
During the
typically
session?
Only Tuesdays and Wednesdays, the busy committee days when most of the action happens.
Well, we've got some exciting news, obviously, to come out of the General Assembly. I feel like it's been a fairly good session, I don't want to say drama-free. There's always a little bit of drama, especially toward, I've noticed in my short time in the state of Tennessee that the liberal Democrats like to make a fuss, especially right at the end of the session, just to get a little FaceTime on television, it seems.
They like to say all their talking points all at once. Hopefully somebody will listen.
Well, not me. I try to give them as little oxygen as humanly possible.
Yeah, same.
If I asked you an assessment of the general session, I don't want to exclude the special because, that's probably, in your opinion, the biggest lift of the year, would it not be?
Yeah, and the biggest deal for us in a decade. So that was the best thing. I got to say, from my tenure as a state director, when I started as state director for AFP in 2018, this is probably our most successful legislative session since 2018.
Mm-hmm. And most of that comes from the education scholarship?
So school choice, we knocked out almost all of our entire legislative agenda that we set forth at the beginning of things that we said we wanted to get done. And because we got school choice done in a special session, we were able to take on a bunch of other things that secured property rights or protected Tennesseans' constitutional rights, things that we just care about generally, but were not top of our priority list.
For those that don't know about AFP and your kind of organizational purpose, remind us what it is.
Here at Americans for Prosperity, we fight for lower taxes, less government, more freedom, and better education. We empower grassroots to have their voices heard and make a difference on public policy so that they can pursue the American dream.
I almost feel like you've said that before.
Might have.
Once or twice. So outside of, and where are we on before I go past it, in terms of the Education Freedom Scholarship Fund, and I mangle the name every time I say it, we are prepping the website and getting ready for people to apply for the scholarships.
Yep,
correct?
Applications are supposed to go live in May. It's a matter of, is it May 1st? Is it May 15th? I think we're all waiting on pins and needles to find out when the application is going to drop. But it seems like everything's ready and in place. I know there's private schools doing informational settings with the Department of Education. We're doing other education meetings so that people know what they need to bring to apply. And we think that we'll fully fulfill the 20,000 scholarships in the first year.
And the possibility exists, if that occurs, that this could grow in subsequent years, right?
Yeah, by 5,000 each year.
Right. What outside of that is the biggest success, in your opinion, during the General Assembly?
So I'd have to say it's actually the constitutional amendment to ban a statewide property tax. And it's such a barrier to change our Constitution. So it had to pass last session by simple majority, this session by 2/3 majority, and now it goes to the voters. It's passed 2/3. And it goes to the voters in November of 26 to forever ban a statewide statewide property tax, just like we did the income tax.
And is that how it happened? Because I wasn't here for the income tax debate, and obviously there was an incredible amount of protest, and Super Talk 99.7 was intimately involved,
right.
Phil Valentine and Pamela and all those. But is that how it happened, that ultimately it went to the voters and the voters said, no, we're not going to consider this ever again?
So we had a former Republican governor that tried to pass a state income tax, and that's what started the process for us to amend our Constitution to forever ban it, just like we're doing with the statewide property tax.
I kind of dig the way that they do it in the state of Tennessee. I know that it's a heavy lift, but I like the idea of making sure that the voters are well aware and that the elected officials fully understand the significance, the heft of changing our Tennessee Constitution, to the point that, as Tori just mentioned, the first reading in a session has to be a simple majority reading, and then it has to come back again the next year, and it has to be a 2/3 majority reading, just to make sure that nobody was confused last time around. We're going to do it this again, and it seems like a little bit of an overkill, but I like it.
With an election in between also.
Right.
So between the years, there has to be an election in between, and it goes on a statewide ballot. So, I mean, yeah, we shouldn't take amending our Constitution lightly. So this is one of those things that we can do to protect future generations of Tennesseans.
It might be a little confusing for the layman, in as much as when we pay property taxes every year, we're not really paying state property taxes.
Correct.
Explain that to the folks.
All right, so you're paying property taxes at the local or city level. That's not going to change with this constitutional amendment. But because before Tennessee was a sales tax state, I think it was 1949, they did levy a statewide property tax. They brought that to zero and switched it out for the sales tax. But because it's still in our Constitution, all it would take is one vote in the legislature and they could levy a statewide property tax on top of your local property taxes that you're currently paying now. Mm-hmm. So we are closing the door and we're forever banning that. There's a lot of work to do on the local property taxes as well. This does not affect the local property taxes at all.
Well, and it's gotten a lot of conversation. We're going to have a good conversation with Courtney Johnston with the Metro Council about it in the 5 o'clock hour, because obviously Davidson County residents are concerned that their property tax rates are about to go up.
They should be
the evaluation, the assessment has just gone up. It was 45% on average. And that can be in and of itself a little bit confusing too.
Yeah.
Because the state tries to protect the property taxpayer in as much as they try to zero out the rates if there are assessment increases. Can you explain this in a way that, I mean, I know it's difficult to explain, but what the state is attempting to do, in my estimation, is to prevent local municipalities from popping the property taxpayer with a huge bill year over year.
So what we have is truth in taxation. It passed in, I think, the 70s. We're one of 3 states that has the gold level plan of truth in taxation. So when they do their property tax reappraisals, when they say your property is worth more or less money, which they do on typically about a 4-year cycle, when that would automatically raise what you're paying in property taxes because they're saying your property's worth more. Well, with truth in taxation, they have to do what is called a certified tax rate because local governments are not allowed to take in additional revenue. It has to be revenue neutral from the reappraisals. Mm-hmm. So they lower the tax rate. It automatically happens. The tax rate has to automatically be lowered so that they cannot get a windfall just because property values went up. But cities like Nashville, liberal cities across our great state, 30% of the time, they do not adopt the certified tax rate, and they use this as an opportunity to raise taxes even further.
Well, at very least, they're forced to actually raise the rate. I mean, and what I look at it as is it's designed to force local municipalities not to hide behind reassessments.
Correct.
In terms of raising revenue. Because otherwise, they would say, hey, we don't have anything. I mean, we don't have anything to do with the reassessment. We don't have anything to do with the fact that, a year ago your property was valued at $200,000. Now it's valued at $250,000. That's the assessor. Hey, but we'll take the extra money that comes along with that reassessment. Instead of that, they have to affirmatively zero it out, and then they have to go to the taxpayers at very least and say, we're raising your tax rates, which is the expectation on the part of Davidson County, I believe.
Yeah, it's an important transparency piece. And, if Nashvillians don't want their property taxes raised, now's the time to start reaching out to your Metro Council members and the mayor's office and tell them that you want them to cut spending instead of raising your taxes.
Well, or just spend at a level that they spent last year. I mean, it's not even so. There will be plenty of those Metro councilors, and Courtney Johnston's not one of them. She'll explain this to you. There are plenty of those counselors that will try to lie to you and tell you we're just getting it back to where it was. That's what they'll say. We're just getting it back to where it was. They're not. The Truth in Taxation Act gets it back to where it was. Correct. That's what that does. What this does is raise your rates. If they go up on the property taxes this year, which is the expectation that Freddie O'Connell will do.
Well, the big thing is figuring out whether or not they're going to adopt the certified tax rate or not. If they adopt the certified tax rate, Truth in Taxation has worked. Taxpayers are protected. If they bump it up, then they've raised your taxes.
What else? Outside of that, you mentioned right before we came on the civil asset forfeiture, which is, it's very nerdy, and I understand that it seems very nerdy, but it's very, very important to stop the encroach of government from your private property. Explain it to folks.
So for those of you with a libertarian streak, you're going to love this, right? I know that's probably why Matt is on the same page as me on this one. So what happens is in Tennessee and many states across the nation, you can have your property taken by law enforcement, even if they are not charging you with a crime. It's a civil action. They essentially are charging your property with being guilty. And because it's civil and not criminal, you don't have the same rights afforded to you. So in Tennessee, if you had, say, some cash or your grandfather's gun or a car or something seized that you were an innocent person in this and you wanted to get it back, you would have to pay $350 per item to have your day in court and have your constitutional due process. So now that $350 bond is gone, because let me tell you, guilty people are not signing up to go into court and reveal evidence against themselves. But innocent people absolutely are going to challenge when they have their stuff taken by the government. And
you don't get that money back. I mean, the $350 is just, it's considered to be court fees or whatever.
Yeah, gone.
And so literally in civil asset forfeiture cases, if a police officer pulls you over and you have a large amount of cash on you, for example, if you're going to buy a vehicle or whatever, it doesn't matter. If they seize that cash for whatever suspicious reasons, then you have to affirmatively prove your innocence, which goes against the basic construct of our judicial system, that you ought not have to do that the government is required to demonstrate your guilt as opposed to you demonstrating your innocence. In this case, that's the way it's always been. And you're saying that we've gotten something passed where you don't have to pay that $350?
You don't have to pay the bond to have your day in court. So you can challenge if you have your property unjustly taken, and you can challenge and, have your day in court and not pay $350 per item. For a lot of folks, it's not even worth challenging because the item that was taken is going to cost you, it is worth far less than the $350 and the attorney that you're going to hire to have your day in court.
How often do we think this goes on in the state?
According to the fiscal note, to the tune of $167,000 a year coming out of Tennesseans' pockets. So that's, if you just counted that as one item per person, that's 455 Tennesseans per year that have had to pay this bond. And so this is going to be protecting their constitutional rights. We would love to get to criminal asset forfeiture. Hey, if someone's guilty of a crime, take their stuff, okay? Sure. And you've proved they're guilty. We are 100% for criminal asset forfeiture. But if you're talking about civil asset forfeiture where you're not even charging the individual with a crime, that's a real problem.
Question for Ms. Venable, and by the way, you can get your questions in, 615-737-9986. I am a 65-plus senior enrolled in Davidson County Property Tax Freeze Program. Mm-hmm. If the statewide property tax passes, would there be a potential statewide program for those of us on fixed incomes?
So the statewide property tax is a constitutional amendment. So once this is going to the ballot, there's not going to be a chance for them to pass a statewide property tax. So they'll be protected either way. They want to make sure that this is something that they vote yes for in November of 2026 to make sure that there's never a statewide property tax, but it will not affect their local property taxes at all whatsoever.
We're with Tori Venable with Americans for Prosperity. A number of you asking questions on the super text line, and please, by all means, get them in. And as a matter of fact, Steve out of Kingston Springs has a question. You have to slip those on, Tori. Watch that water and slip those headphones on as we talk with Steve, who is up next with a question for Tori Venable. Hello, Steve. Good afternoon.
Hi, Steve.
Thank you. I am a public school teacher, and I'm curious if the state legislature is going to cancel the end-of-course tests.
I don't believe that they're canceling the end-of-course tests. I don't think that was part of the education freedom accounts at all. I do know that they are looking at changing what kind of tests they are doing, but they were allowing private schools to take any nationally norm-recognized test. I think we would follow suit soon, if that's working well, for public schools to be able to do the same thing.
Okay. Hey, thank you.
Hey, you're welcome.
Absolutely, Steve. Thank you. 4524 writes in and says, I wish that you knew exactly how civil asset forfeiture worked. There's a very good process. There's a seizure form. There's a receipt and an affidavit that's filed in criminal court of record in the county in which it was seized. and then it's filed with the state, and the state then sets a date for civil asset forfeiture. Most people don't take grandpa's gun. That's a ridiculous argument. Any response?
Well, anytime you violate someone's constitutional rights, that is a ridiculous argument. So, I mean, we want to make sure people's constitutional rights are protected. If we really wanted to make sure that seizures were going the way they were supposed to, they would just send the money to the general fund instead of to the agency that's taking the property from Tennesseans. So, or we would say you don't actually forfeit the property until you've been criminally convicted. You could seize it, but you don't actually forfeit the property until conviction.
Right. And add to that the idea that I have to affirmatively pay money that I never get back, even if it's determined that I have done nothing wrong and I get my property back in the civil case. I never get that money back. And so I have to pay right now $350 in order to demonstrate my innocence in court. And I just disagree with that. I disagree with having to affirmatively pay that money to demonstrate your innocence.
And because it's civil court, the difference is it's not even clear and convincing evidence or beyond a reasonable doubt like criminal court would be. They just have to think that you more likely than not got the asset from some kind of criminal means. And that means that they don't even have to charge you with a crime. So that's the problem, really, with civil asset forfeiture. It should be criminal asset forfeiture. Absolutely. If you catch someone with drugs, guns, like you catch someone doing something wrong and you're charging them with a crime, you're going to convict them in a court of law. It should run absolutely parallel to it. But it's the civil part that is a violation of people's, Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, quite a few amendments. So we just don't want that to continue.
I agree wholeheartedly, and my libertarian streak runs wide with that. So once again, I get a message from Allison saying, thanks for asking the question, Matt. I may have confused you. If there becomes a statewide property tax, it's my concern regarding the ability to freeze my liability at zero. Okay, so just to clarify, there is a constitutional amendment that will be before the people in November of 2026, which is the next statewide general election.
Correct.
That would prevent the state from enacting any property tax statewide.
Correct.
So this question would not, the question before the people is, do we want to prevent the state from having a statewide property tax, or do we want to keep it at status quo? Right now, the statewide property tax is at zero.
Correct.
So you're not paying any taxes to the state. But the idea is that, God forbid we get a bunch of liberals in the General Assembly, they could raise a property tax.
Exactly.
Statewide. And we want to prevent that before it's even a question.
But now that we've got this through the constitutional amendment hurdle and it's going on the ballot, I can promise you do not have to worry about them passing a statewide property tax in 2026 because I will kill that bill and we will be seeing it on the ballot. 95% chance that, Tennesseans approve it. So,
anything else we need to know before we say goodbye? I think we've covered it all.
If you want to stop the property tax hike in Nashville, you should join Pamela Furr on May 1st at 9:30 in the morning in front of the Metro Courthouse and tell them no new taxes.
And, Freddie's speaking on May 1st at 10 o'clock, I think.
Yep. That's
and then he's coming on our show at 3 o'clock that afternoon.
It's a little bit of a protest, but, like how conservatives would do it.
No, I absolutely love it. Tori, thank you for everything. We appreciate you.